What is up? I'm Norman James coming to you from London, Ontario. Mike Augello's with us. He's in Cheektowaga, New York. It is November 17th, 2019. It's the Sunday Spectacular. This is the Leafs Convo podcast.
It's Nathan Jenner from Oak Ridge Ford. The 2020 models are rolling in, including the all-new redesigned Escape and Explorer. For a limited time, save big with Black Friday specials on all remaining in-stock 2019s. Like a 2019 Ford Edge SEL all-wheel drive, starting at $433 per month plus HST for a 5-year lease with $0 down. Oak Ridge Ford, where a reputation gets you here and the trust keeps you coming back. For full details, visit oakridgeford.com.
Well, Michael, it's been a week since we've spoken and a week to forget for the Maple Leafs. 4 straight losses now punctuated by a 6-1 defeat in Pittsburgh the night prior, a 4-2 loss to the Bruins, who always outwork them. The Vultures are circling one man, Mike Babcock. Is that fair right now?
No, I don't think so. I understand it, and I think if this continues for a lengthy period, you're going to see some sort of change. But right now, this team is playing its worst of the season. I think they put up an energetic effort against Boston on Friday, but they were undone, as they usually have been, by defensive gaffes, by Morgan Riley letting Brad Marchand walk around him, by Charlie Coyle basically sitting in front of the net waiting for a pass. I mean, these are symptomatic of this team right now. And I think the reason that everybody focuses on Babcock is because you have 3 first-round losses. You have no appreciable improvement defensively, and you have him continually talking about this team playing a style that doesn't fit the personnel. Now, I don't know whether that is the responsibility of the general manager to match the coach's needs and wants, or if it's the responsibility of the coach to adapt. But there is a disconnect. There is a philosophical divide. It's been consistent since Kyle Dubas took over as general manager, and he has every right to want this team to play a certain way. And for Babcock to have success, I think he has to adapt to that. But right now, I have a lot of problem with the way the players are playing on the ice. There are some that are playing pretty well. There are some that are playing well below expectations. So there is enough blame to go around, but you are right. The guy who's going to take the fall if this continues is Babcock.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast. Norman James with Mike Augello. We're going to get to your comments, questions, concerns through the community platform on YouTube as well as social media in just a moment. We're just going to focus on the way this team is playing right now, because it's not a lot of fun. It's costing them in the standings. It's costing the organization millions of dollars. What the F is this team going to do about the way it's playing now? Right now, I'm going to preface, every complaint that we share in this episode of the Convo with the reality that Tampa Bay, a team that won the President's Trophy last year, is 2 points behind the Maple Leafs in the standings right now. New Jersey was supposed to be really good this year. They're not playing too well. The Vegas Golden Knights, 9-9 on the season. So there are a lot of teams struggling. We tend to think that, when the Leafs struggle, they're the only team that struggles. And when they succeed, they're the only team that succeeds. It's not a lot of fun right now, Mike. And I'm really just trying to put my finger on how this team can get better, start making improvements. And then obviously, inevitably, there will be changes somewhere. But how does removing Mike Babcock right now, other than maybe lifting a weight off the shoulders of the players, appeasing a lot of the fans out there who just hate the guy, make this team better immediately?
Well, that's the problem. I don't know if it does. I mean, we all know who the replacement will be. It won't be an interim Dave Hackstall, who's on the staff, who's a former coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. If they fire Babcock, it's Sheldon Keefe's job. It's going to be. Do you want to fire Babcock and put Sheldon Keefe in the pickle that the Leafs are in right now? Now, granted, I think he will have a different philosophy than Babcock, and maybe that'll change things around. But really, the problem is right now, and I think that it's been inherent with this team. And let me just say this before I go into that. I said something last night during the game that I don't think they'll fire Babcock unless they're 10 to 12 points, double-digit points out of a playoff spot in January or February, and everybody was like, well, they're out of the playoffs right now. They're 2 points out of a playoff spot right now, playing as crappy as they've played. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think there will be a panic firing of Mike Babcock. So, cool it. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I understand the want to fire a coach if things are not working, and this team has dramatically underachieved through 22 games. But I think it would not behoove Kyle Dubas to fire Babcock if it's just for a change of pace. You might have the inmates running the asylum if that's the case, and I think that's not something that you want taken forth. But I just think right now, structurally, this team is playing nowhere close to the type of hockey that Mike Babcock wants them to play. They have offensive weapons throughout the lineup, 3 lines deep of, I think, good offensive players, 2 pairings, I think, that have talent on them. And really, I sometimes think he wants them to play like the 95 New Jersey Devils, and that just doesn't fit.
Mike, the Leafs are 4th in goals in their conference. Okay. 4th in goals. They've scored 71. They've given up 77. There's a debate over whether Mike Babcock's grind style makes sense for a team that's supposed to be, or that's been constructed to be free flowing, whatever that means. Well, aren't they flowing offensively? They've got 71 goals. They're among the leaders in goals, top 10. How does free flowing hockey help shut the door on the other end of the ice? So this idea that, well, they're not allowed to be free-flowing. If they were constricted and not scoring any goals, and the Leafs were losing 1-0 games or 3-1 games, that's one thing. They're scoring enough goals. They're just letting too many in. That's a defensive buy-in that every player has to take credit or take the fault for, Mike. Mike Babcock, he's just the guy they want out of there because he's an older guy and they just don't like him. William Nylander's getting his points, guys. So what's the problem? This free-flowing thing, I know they're not playing the way that Kyle Dubas, I guess, envisioned them. But why is Mike Babcock the head coach then? There has to be some sort of agreement that it's going to work out, that the players are supposed to pick up their end of the bargain. And they're not right now. And I understand that a change of scenery from behind the coach's bench can change mentality, freshen things up. And that's one possibility that I'm resigned to happening at some point, if it does. But this free-flowing versus a constricted style, Mike, sorry to interrupt you. Come on now. They're free-flowing enough. They're scoring enough goals. They're just not defensively buying in. And I don't care who the head coach is. You better buy in defensively or you're not winning anything.
Well, I mean, the problem is, I think it was illustrated perfectly by what ended up being the go-ahead goal in the third period against the Islanders, where Tyson Barrie jumps into an offensive attack that's not there. He's exiting the zone, and the puck is turned over by Alex Kerfoot, and then it's a 2-on-1 down low with Barrie over the blue line, completely out of the play, and then Beauvillier scores basically on a 2-on-1, beating Anderson. And Anderson should have stopped it. It was not a great goal, but it was a complete breakdown. And that is the thing. You basically have a bunch of offense first players. Now I think that there are some, Zach Hyman coming back is a good thing. He plays two-way hockey. I think, guys like Trevor Moore and Andreas Janssen at times play that way, but there are exceptions to the rule. Austin Matthews, for all of his great talent defensively so far this year, has been a nightmare. William Nylander turns over the puck. I don't care what the analytics or the Corsi numbers or whatever that bullshit is. I'm sorry. It's not good. And now, on top of that, you have the losses of Marner for at least 4 weeks, Kerfoot indefinitely, and now Trevor Moore got hurt in the game against Boston. So you're dealing with, Nick Patan playing third line, a fourth line that I just think is ineffective other than winning faceoffs. I mean, it's all sort of it's all rolling downhill if they don't break this cycle. And maybe it's good that they're going on the road and they're going to play, I think, the next 6 on the road. maybe that's a good thing, but they're 3-6 on the road. And Austin Matthews, their leading goal scorer, I think he has 14 goals. 13 of them were at home. So that is – they're going to really have to change the way they're playing hockey to be able to win some games on this road trip.
This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. Big Black Friday deals right now, Mike. I'm selling all sorts of vehicles to people who are getting huge amounts of money off, cash-wise, financing-wise. It's ridiculous. It makes the job a little bit easier, but it's almost crazy. Message me inside the community section for more details. If you're local or even from out of the immediate area, you can also get at me on Twitter at I am Norman James. Jay the Alpha on Twitter at Hyman Hustles. I like that one. How do you make a coaching change and still send a message to the room that these kids don't control things?
That's the real difficulty of this current situation, because I think if you fire Babcock, it's on the players, because the players are not playing the game that Babcock imagines. And maybe that's a lack of flexibility on Babcock's part, but I believe that what he wants them to play would be effective if they were capable of doing it, but they're not. So, if they fire Babcock in season, and this is why I continue to say, and things can change. If they lose 10, 12 in a row, they drop out of the playoff race, then Babcock is probably getting fired. But if they stay, in the race for a wild card spot, which is not what the intention was, they should be a top 3 team in the Atlantic, but they stay in the race, then Babcock is going to stay the coach until the end of the year. And then that evaluation is ongoing. The evaluation of what this team is doing. And right now, obviously, they're cratering. Everything is going wrong. One thing Babcock said after the game yesterday was that, they gave up the first goal and they just sort of crumbled. It's like they lost confidence, and that was basically it. And I'm sorry, after last night's performance, I can't blame Michael Hutchinson for the 5 games that they lost. I can't blame Kazimir Kaskasuo for his performance, because I thought he played fairly well. They're just defensively inept right now, and you cannot accept that. And and the Leafs management and coaching staff cannot accept it. And if they don't fire Babcock, then I think some change is going to need to be made, a trade of some sort, or maybe calling up players from the Marlies. But right now, it's not working.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. It is not working. On the community platform, youtube.com/the Leafs Convo, the Fire Babcock chance will be strong tomorrow. I am now on the Fire Them All train. Bring up Keefe and his staff, all of them. The Marlies can make do with a couple of water boys and the equipment manager. Okay. That's one way to look at it. From Dwayne Matheson, by the way.
Like I said earlier, we know if Babcock is gone, who is going to be the replacement. Remember, he will be a rookie NHL coach. He has coached very well in the OHL. He has coached extremely well in the American Hockey League. He's won a Calder Cup championship. I think Keefe is an NHL coach. I think he will be a good one. But that's why I do think that putting him in this situation right now would not be beneficial for him. Let the season play out. If they, the one thing that people fail to, I know that they traded their first round pick, and in the Marlowe thing, and what do you know? It's like, well, that pick was lottery protected. So if they have this bad year, Babcock will be gone, and they will have their first round pick. Not to say that cures all the ills, but I'm just saying it's not disastrous. And do I think this team is going to play badly 2 years in a row like the Ottawa Senators did? No.
So I put on the community section, Convo in the AM. Pretty simple last night. Didn't have to elaborate much. Chris Smith says, I can't wait to hear it. Well, Chris, here it is, brother. Michael Matthew. For the love of Leafs Nation, will Brendan Shanahan please fire Kyle Dubas and take over the GM spot for the rest of the year? You see, this comes down to factions, Mike. It's the Dubas side versus the Babcock side. When I think internally, these guys are all at least trying to be on the same page. Last night during Hockey Night in Canada, there was a talk during the intermission about the Leafs. I think Elliot Friedman talking about the Leafs potentially shopping Tyson Barrie, or there's interest in that guy. Who brought Tyson Barrie in? I'm not saying it's an about face, but he's the guy who brings these players in who don't fit into the mold, Mike. So the general manager is
Right.
complicit here, if not in a position to shoulder a lot of the responsibility for what's going on here.
Obviously, it's clearly not working at this point right now. The additions that were made during the offseason, I think Alex Kerfoot's played very well. I think that, Mikheyev, bringing him from the KHL, that has worked pretty well. The coach, and this is the thing. People don't realize, they just look at Cody Ceci and say, okay, Cody Ceci sucks and he's on the top pairing with Morgan Rielly and he doesn't belong there. I mean, part of the Cody Ceci deal was getting rid of the Nikita Zaitsev deal, who was a real fan favorite. So, that was 5 years of Nikita Zaitsev for 1 year of Cody Ceci, and they hoped that it would work out. Ceci has played just okay, to use a Randy Carlyle phrase. But Morgan Rielly is the concern here. They're playing him over 25 minutes a night, and he is playing defensively. He is playing terrible. He got walked on that Marchand goal. He was out of position on the game winner by Marchand.
Is he exhausted?
He is not.
Is he just exhausted?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, they're sitting him out of practices. I don't know what exactly the injury is, but he's playing through some injury. But then he's playing 25 minutes a night because Babcock keeps putting out that top pairing, and there is no level of trust there with Tyson Berry, who was -4 last night in Pittsburgh. And I acknowledge Elliot Friedman knows a lot more and has a lot more context than I do. He did say that people are calling for Berry, and the Leafs are saying they're not trading him right now. What's going on here is it's sort of low-hanging fruit. The Leafs are struggling. Berry is struggling. Maybe we can get him for cheap. They're not going to trade him until they're out of it, because they traded Nazem Kadri to get him, and a defenseman of Berry's quality making under $3 million, they can, if the decision is to trade him, it'll be closer to the deadline because they'll get the greatest return for him. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon unless they get a return that is fantastic. And I think, based on the fact that he's 5 assists in 22 games, I don't think they're going to get a great return right now. But if his play improves, or if it gets closer to the deadline and a team needs a power play quarterback, then that deal would happen. It would be nice if they would actually put him on the power play instead of Morgan Rielly, who doesn't have a big shot.
But here's the thing, okay? Here's the contradiction. Fans who dislike Babcock and want him gone also want the team to win. Or do they want the team to fail right now? Here's a question that I'm not going to post in community. It's just for fun. If a lost season means Mike Babcock is gone, and then the exalted Sheldon Keefe comes up in this free-flowing style of whatever kind of hockey that people are thinking and imagining will be implemented, and everybody in the league will fold to the feet of the mighty Maple Leafs, who are free-flowing like the Canadians of the mid-'70s. If it all means Mike Babcock gets fired, if this season's a lost season and Mike Babcock is gone, are you willing to accept that? Right? I mean, are we thinking that Mike Babcock has to stay in the mix, even though we can't stand the guy? The Leafs need to win some playoff rounds, and then he should be gone anyway, because that's not going to work. If getting rid of Mike Babcock means taking it on the chin this season, are you ready to endure that and just watch William Nylander get his points and feel like you won the Stanley Cup every time he, gets a primary assist or, shoots one off the banister,
Well, that's the one step back, 2 steps forward philosophy. And I understand it, because if people really think that Mike Babcock is the problem, then that's a philosophy that they're embracing. But remember, this is a guy 5 years ago who everybody thought was the savior. And now all of a sudden he's the reason. They have achieved a certain level of success, 100 points 3 years in a row, or 2 years in a row, excuse me. But they haven't cashed in the playoffs. And now they're in the midst of a puzzling streak where that just nothing seems to be going right. I mean, I understand the embracing of the get rid of Babcock, fire Babcock thought out there, but it's more complex than that. Now, if they miss the playoffs this year, we know he's gone. But and I know that it has been said that they have a lot riding on this season. I will grant you that, but I think Dubas, and then for the critics of Dubas, he hasn't even hired a coach yet. He assumed Mike Babcock. He almost fired Mike Babcock at the end of last season, but didn't, and changed over the coaching staff. And by the way, when Randy Carlyle got fired in January, I think it was 2015. He had hired 2 new assistants. So that is always sort of the precursor of a coach getting fired when he shakes up his staff. So, I mean, there's a lot of things in flux right now. And I just don't think the one thing that Kyle Dubas won't do is jump into something before he thinks it's ready to be done.
Yeah, this team needs to be restructured or torn down a few floors to rebuild it better. Mike Babcock goes first. And then it's on Dubas with Sheldon Keefe. Look, last night, guys like Zach Hyman got more ice time than William Nylander. Austin Matthews didn't play 20-plus minutes a game, but on the defensive end, we're worried about certain players playing way too much and the other guys not, getting into the action on an equal basis. If Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Tavares, and when Mitch Marner comes back, we haven't even brought up Marner. The absence of Marner, what's that effect? We can get into that real quick before we go. But if these top guys weren't getting theirs and were being constricted or being inhibited, held back, suppressed with a style of play, you could make the case easily so that a coaching change is necessary, and the immediacy of a coaching change is necessary because your top guys aren't able to free flow or be what they're supposed to be and what they're paid to do, right? But Matthews is getting his offensively. Nylander's burst out. It looks fantastic. It's great. Tavares is struggling a little bit, but it's not like he's not getting his chances, okay? So when Sheldon Keefe comes in, what changes? How do the guys who are not the acquisitions and these other players, how do they get better immediately? And what changes for the top players? What changes? They're already getting theirs. They're scoring enough goals. What changes, Mike? What's the dynamic that changes other than just, a fresh approach? And I get that. I'm on side with that. But what else? You're going to need more than that because this isn't the Maple Leafs league. This isn't just their time. There are 30 other teams vying for the same prize, all doing the things that they need to do in their own way. How does the Maple Leafs bringing in Sheldon Keefe all of a sudden put the rest of the league on notice that finally this team is allowed to do what it needs to do and all of you need to watch the F out? A few more minutes, Mike.
Well, I think the philosophy of changing from Babcock to Sheldon Keefe is that, the perception here is that Babcock is conservative and inflexible, and in some ways he is, and that Keefe. I mean, one thing I've observed with the Marlies, he plays players who are tough. He plays players who are skilled. He sort of gets the best out of all of them. There's not one particular style. He adapts. He makes lemonade out of lemons.
He's got
for
guys
lack of better.
in the AHL right now. What are they? 9 wins, 2 losses, whatever. He's got guys who can fulfill the roles that he's looking to employ, right? Will he have those players with the Maple Leafs? Or is Kyle Dubas waiting to bring in the right players for Sheldon Keefe when he finally gets there? And maybe that's part of the master plan.
Well, I think there would be a change in the structure of the roster if Sheldon Keefe were there instead of Mike Babcock. I don't think that Nick Shore would be on the roster. I don't think that I think Dimitar Timashov would. I think that and maybe he would get a little more ice time because he was a value player for Keefe with the Marlies. I think you could see a Jeremy Bracco there. I mean, one of the things that you could see with a Keefe is instead of having a devoted fourth line of heavy players with basically no offense. I know that there's a workmanlike attitude that line puts out, but really, I mean, this organization is deep in offensive talent, and if you're going to buy into the speed skill narrative, then go all the way. Then have a fourth line that can match up against another fourth line and beat them to the puck with speed and skill and offense. Buy into it completely. I'm for that it
Mm-hmm.
works. And the only way you know if it'll work or not is to actually do it. But this sort of playing things halfway and putting out Freddie Gauthier and Nick Shore on the fourth line, guys, two guys. One, Gautier's improved, but I don't think he's an
Mm-hmm.
NHL player. And I know that he's improved this year, and people are pointing to that, and that's all fine and good. But I just, he's going to score 5 goals this year, and I don't think he's great defensively. So there will be different philosophies. And right now, the philosophy of Babcock is, it doesn't match the roster that they have.
This is weird. I don't have a good feeling about what's to come, but a couple of wins, whether they mean to get them or not, will calm my stomach a little bit. Will it calm the masses? I don't know. Speed, skill are amazing. But what about the toughness, Mike? Will Sheldon Keefe being behind the bench all of a sudden transform the Maple Leafs beyond what the Boston Bruins could ever hope to be? I don't think so. I really don't. But again, it feels like a divorce, or it feels like a separation between Babcock and the organization is looming. And I feel that kind of sucks because I like Mike Babcock. He's done a lot of great things. Yeah, he is what he is. He's stubborn. I wish he would have evolved. I wish he did that better. But I mean, he's a gentleman, great guy. I was hoping that he would be the one to lead this team across the finish line and finally get done for this organization. I think it's festering, Mike. There's just a lot of angst and animosity and hope and dreams dashed and expectations and divisiveness that's happening with this organization right now. And it's kind of sad, but it feels like the inevitable is Mike Babcock's on his way out at some point. OG's Converse, what say you? Mike, last word to you. The Leafs have important games coming up. Any game's important, right, Mike? Just to try to get back on track. And, I also wanted to make a comment about Mitch Marner's absence. He's going to be gone for quite some time.
Well, I think that the injuries, the absences of not only Marner but Kerfoot, and now I don't know how serious the Moore injury is, but he's, third, fourth line guy, but he provides a lot of energy. Kerfoot, dental fractures that had to be surgically repaired. They said indefinitely. That could be a week, that could be 2 weeks, that could be 4 weeks. We don't know. So they haven't specified. Marner is out at least 4 weeks, a minimum of 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. And usually high ankle sprains are longer than 4 weeks. So, if they get lucky, they get him back in mid-December. But what Marner are you getting back? Because high ankle sprains usually have an effect, a lingering effect after after they come back in the lineup. The one thing I would say about the Leafs is it seems that they keep these players out until they're ready to perform. Mm-hmm. Hyman has stepped in completely and doesn't seem he's phased at all by his knee injury. Dermott the same. So I think when you get Marner back, you're going to get the real Mitch Marner, but it's a question of whether you get him back before Christmas or not. But that also has to be factored into the way the team is playing. I know it's an excuse, but this team through 22 games has not had a complete lineup for one. Dermott and Hyman were out, then Tavares is out, then Marner is out, now Kerfoot and Moore are out. That is a factor.
It certainly is. Converts, OGs, get at us inside the comment section. Get at us on Twitter, at Mike and Buffalo, at the Leafs Convo, at I am Norman James. Consider the Leafs Convo and all of our platforms a therapy session for all of us. Whether we help you through this entanglement that is your feelings of the Maple Leafs right now, the good and the bad and the ugly, or maybe you just want to shut us off and then listen to us later. It's a hate listen for you. We don't care. Just keep coming back. We like the clicks. Michael, enjoy your Sunday, my friend. Good times are ahead somewhere. Talk to you later.